today's session right now, so welcome. And let's see, I want to welcome you. We are going to be using a platform called Menti. What this requires is for you to open a web browser. If you're using Zoom on your web browser, don't change the window, just open another screen and go to menti.com, and you will find a box there for a code. And the code here is listed at the top of the page, 5383015. And we'll be offering questions for you to provide input and some of your experiences in nonprofit resources, both looking for them and developing them as we kind of move through the presentation. And this way too, we'll be able to save some of that information. I will tell you it's completely anonymous, so be as honest as you want to be. We all have pretty thick skins, so feel free. And we've got a couple of questions here to sort of, the code is at the top of the page that you're seeing on the screen, 5383015. And those instructions will be at the top of every question page. So the website is menti.com with all of the stuff beforehand. And the code is 5383015. And so with that, let's try this out and have a few sort of introductory questions to help us get an idea, a feel for who's in the room joining us today. So first of all, we want to see if you represent a nonprofit, a for-profit, perhaps an LLC, or a government agency. And you can see on your screen, you can see the presentation screen, how those answers are filling in as everybody chimes in. We'll give this a little bit of time here. I've got my stopwatch going, and ask you to let us know what area you work in. I would think, given the nature of the conversation, the majority of you will be not in the nonprofit sector, which seems to be holding out. We'll give it a few more seconds here and make it a full minute. Great. So we do, in fact, have the majority of nonprofits or 501c something organizations in the room. That's great. Those are exactly the majority of the people that we want to hear from, although both the for-profit sector and the public sector are going to prove to be very important in this discussion as well. So next question. If you are in a nonprofit, so the 27 people or so that answered that, what sort of mission do you serve? And you'll see a list of the primary types of missions recognized by the IRS to help us with some of those designations, so we can get an idea where the majority of the input is going to be coming from. Boy, we're getting a pretty good representation all around. And we'll have discussion later on. I think I'm very curious about that other area to see where those people are coming from. Arts and human services seem to be taking the lead. Oh, public and societal benefit. That's awesome. Great. Give it a couple more seconds here. Right, that seems to be about it. So awesome. So as we see, human services are that makes total sense. That this is actually a really great breakdown, except for that other section. I'm very curious about that. But this is a really good representation of the state nonprofit sector. So I think we have a pretty good representation here. So we will move on to the next question. And that is, if I can get on the right screen, Why did you choose to join us today? Now, in this case, this is an open-ended question, and you can answer us as many times as you can want. Feel free to just, if it's just to learn, just to observe, just to kill time, feel free. But we'd love to hear more about why you're here so we can make sure that this is a relevant discussion for you. Lots of learning. I guarantee you um, that there'll be plenty of an opportunity for that. Learning, observing, learning about WisNRG. That's great. Interested in more resources and trainings? Boy, all of you people with the learning, you've come right to the correct place. Funding for capital campaigns, resources available. It's happening in the nonprofit world. I do sense some common themes here, so that's pretty fantastic. Milwaukee stinks in terms of supporting the nonprofit sector. I wouldn't say it stinks, that's just my personal opinion, but there's room for improvement, absolutely. But I appreciate your honesty. So great. So I think we have some really common answers, common themes. So we're going to move on. And I think you'll all be pretty pleased with what we've got online for today. So with that, I'm going to move on here and and give you an opportunity to learn more about WisNRG and who we are and what we do. And so I'm going to turn the conversation over to one of my colleagues, Mary Beth Collins, the Executive Director of the Center for Community and Nonprofit Studies at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, to take us through a little introduction of who we are. Hi, Mary
Yes.
Beth.
Hello. Thank you so much, Bryce. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mary Beth Collins, as Bryce said, and I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Community and Nonprofit Studies at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And I am joined here today by a couple of my other colleagues from that center. So just want to acknowledge that I'm just one of many making that center happen at UW, and just one of many of the units. We kind of say units sometimes, the shops or the units that have been participating in this thing we call WisNRG. So before I get into what WisNRG is all about, I also just want to really say thank you to all of you for spending this time with us today. We know how hard you're working out there and the competing demands. So the fact that you're giving some time for this conversation means a lot to us, and is certainly going to make all of our work together as the Wisconsin nonprofit sector so much stronger, and hopefully is just one of many steps in this process. So I am going to ask, I want to also just say thanks to Bryce for putting together these slides with his awesome celebrity images. And this Meryl Streep one is a good one. She wants us to get to the point on what is WisNRG. So let's go ahead to the next slide and I'll tell you a little bit more. So around 2016, there were a few key players, particularly on Wisconsin campuses, that were doing work to try to serve the nonprofit sector. And we were very aware of the fact that there was not at least a functional nonprofit association nor a statewide platform for all of us to talk to each other and to find out more about what the statewide landscape looked like when it came to the nonprofit sector, and what resources were available to the nonprofit sector and what nonprofits were going through. Now, there were important efforts that I want to give credit to. Bryce's shop at the Helen Bader Institute and others had done things like the report on the annual report that they've done, or the periodic report that they've done on what this Wisconsin nonprofit sector looks like. We have a Wisconsin philanthropy network in Wisconsin. We have a United Way of Wisconsin. So it wasn't that there weren't people that cared about the state of the Wisconsin nonprofit sector, but we don't and didn't at the time have really a functional Wisconsin Nonprofit Association. As you probably know, all being in the sector, we did for a time have a Wisconsin Nonprofit Association, but in its approximately 10 to 15-year history, it kind of had fits and starts, and in the end has dissolved. And so while many other states have a very obvious portal for folks working in the sector to find each other through, and to have maybe an annual conference, and to have things like job postings and resources that are listed in one place, we didn't really have that. And many of us were really feeling that in our day-to-day work. At the University of Wisconsin-Madison alone, we had 3 to 5 different units on campus that were getting queries from the nonprofit sector. And even for us to coordinate was a step, but then we really wanted to coordinate with our colleagues across the state as well. So basically, rather than launch any kind of a more formal organization, what we decided to do, kind of going for what was possible at the time, was to form an informal network where on about a quarterly basis, several of us who are serving nonprofit organizations get together. We try to continue to invite people into that. And we try to sort out a little bit what we can do as an informal network. And so with that, I'll have Bryce skip to the next slide. And we've tried to make sure that we're really conscientious about what this group can and should do with its limited capacity, and as we continue to navigate what the needs really are. And so to date, what we've done is limited this group a little bit, in the sense that we generally ask folks from public sector or nonprofit sector organizations to come be a part of it, but specifically those organizations that are serving nonprofits. So while we work a lot with frontlines organizations that many of you represent in our day-to-day work, this quarterly meeting and this group tends to be those organizations like mine and Bryce's and others on this call that are trying to do things to support the nonprofit sector. So you can see some examples there of just a few of those types of organizations.
I would like to take a moment and point out some of the other participants who are on the call. And thank you for joining us. We have Ben Hastel from Jobs That Help, a very useful website that is a national jobs board, as well as maintaining a calendar of all professional development events going on around the state. Thanks for joining us, Ben. And we also have Kim O'Brien, who is the Executive Director of the Nonprofit Leadership Initiative in the Fox Valley, supported by the Community Foundation of the Fox Valley region. We also have several of our UW-Madison cohort online, Adrian, Sophie, and Amy Hilgendorf. Amy, remind me, because I seem to get it wrong every time. What offices do you actually work for, and what do you do? Chime in.
Yeah, we're with the Center for Community and Nonprofit Studies with Mary Beth as well.
Awesome, thank you. So that gives you kind of an idea of how we approach who we are and kind of what we do. Mary Beth, wait a minute, don't pay attention to this. Isn't a question for you. This isn't a question for y'all. I just didn't turn that off. Do you want to go over the why, what, and how?
Yeah. I'm sure many of you, through your various professional development opportunities and such, have encountered this Simon Sinek presentation on Start With Why. And he wrote a book on it too. And it really is an exercise that organizations can go through that is a little bit akin to a mission and vision exercise, but I prefer it a little bit. And we as a group did really deliberately go through this process to make sure that as we continue to put effort into these quarterly meetings and some of the work that we were doing, that we knew what the purpose of it was and that how we were going to define it. And so we started with why, and we decided that the reason for being was that the Wisconsin nonprofit and community organizations can benefit from a Wisconsin-wide platform for stakeholders to share about efforts, practices, and then I think that trailed off, but it's supposed to be resources. And then what is WisNRG? We're a collective of those service tiers. So again, those organizations sort of providing support and services, public and nonprofit organizations that coordinates efforts to address the needs of the nonprofit sector. And then the how, which is the last bullet of this little exercise, is that we collect, compile, share, and communicate information about efforts, resources, and gaps in the Wisconsin community and nonprofit sectors. And so Although we are all doing this work for WisNRG as a add-on to our full-time plus jobs, we have made some progress on these goals, and we would like to make sure that as we potentially have the opportunity to grow our efforts, refine them, or even seek some additional support for them, that is very informed by all of you and many others in the sector. So I think that's it for the what is WisNRG piece. Bryce, did I forget anything?
No, I think we're all good.
Okay.
As Mary Beth mentioned, and we've talked about, one of the things that WisNRG has taken on during the last several years is to develop an online inventory of all of the resources available throughout Wisconsin that provide the primarily capacity building support to nonprofits throughout Wisconsin. We have been, as Mary Beth said, we've been meeting for almost 5 years, and we decided that we would tackle the inventory in the following ways. First of all, we would try to break things down in certain areas, and these are kind of the basic structure of how we organize different resources to try and find them more readily and make them generally more accessible.
And Bryce, if I may just chime in, I failed to mention this, but the initial step to organize this inventory and then use these categories to structure it actually did come from something much like what we're doing today. Back in 2016, when our center, along with the Helen Bader Institute and other collaborators, hosted our Center for Community and Nonprofit Studies annual event. And we had a workshop session where we asked community and nonprofit leaders, what are you looking for? We get these miscellaneous inquiries all the time of, I need an intern, I need volunteers, I need a pro bono fundraising consultant. And we were getting that ad hoc sort of miscellaneous information, or anecdotal information is what I should say. But we wanted to have a better sense of what the comprehensive needs were for the types of pro bono and accessible services that organizations were looking for. And these were actually the categories that came out of that workshop. And so we chose to use those for when we tried to start seeking and organizing the listings. And then I can just say a little more about the regions, Bryce, and then you can wrap us up here. This was an interesting discussion. Any of you working in Wisconsin that are not squarely in Madison or Milwaukee probably appreciate very much that defining the regions of Wisconsin can be a little bit tricky. And we did go through various different analyses of how to set regions to be able to organize the inventory, not only according to those substantive categories that we were looking at on the previous screen, but also to start to have some buckets so that, one, we could list resources in regions which we thought at the time would be more useful to folks. If you're sitting up in Superior, you probably are more interested in what's up there than what is down in Kenosha. So we thought that the regions were very relevant to try to at least define, even though it was hard to do so. And then also we wanted to do the regions because we really wanted some WisNRG members on the ground in those regions to help us vet the resources that we found. So if we saw a nonprofit service in Green Bay, Wisconsin, we knew we needed to be able to ask our folks in the WisNRG network in Green Bay, is this still a relevant resource? Are they still taking nonprofit clients? Are they vetted? Are they good? So that was the premise with the regions at that point, although I will just segue back to Bryce by saying, I think we're questioning a little bit, again, whether geography matters all that much, because now we're living in a world where we're all online. And that might not last forever, but we do still want your input on, what you think about the organization that we've used to date and maybe what direction we should be headed in.
Great. And so that's essentially how the inventory has been developed and structured. And one of the things we'll be talking about later on is, does that work? And what are some other ideas? Some of the other resources that have come up over time that we have available are, as you can see, a jobs board and a professional events calendar and jobs that help. And through the UW system, a number of sort of data and research resources. All right, so with this, let's all go back to our menti.com page. And for those of you that joined us late, we are doing some interactive and discussions here by opening a brand new web page and going to menti.com and entering the code 5383015. And keep that page open and don't close it out because we'll be using it throughout. So are there existing resource listings in your area that you already know about and rely on? Feel free to say yes or no, or let us know what they are, where they exist. And aside from the WisNRG inventory, are there other inventories that we may not be aware of that we can help lift up or perhaps join with? We've done a lot of scouring, but we're always open to other ideas, other observers as well. So are there other resource listings in your area that you already rely on? And that could be anything from a jobs board, a volunteer board, um, an events calendar, some of the things that we do have, but just simply in other locations, in other places. We'll give it a few more seconds here. Yeah, I will tell you the Fox Valley has been doing a great job in providing these sort of access points to their community. And that's why we're very glad to have Kim as part of this initiative.
I just noticed there's a question in the chat while y'all are working on that about whether the PowerPoint with results of the Menti polls can be distributed.
Yes,
And
I will say, and I will clarify, we were going to address that at the end, but the video of the presentation, as well as a copy of the PowerPoint and all of that answers and responses will be made available. We'll be collecting all of this information and putting together a little report with our findings that will be made available not just to the participants of this particular town hall, but to the broader communities as well. That report will probably take a little longer than a couple days, but the video and the slides will be made available right away. So it looks like we're kind of running Milwaukee Theater Alliance, great. United Way Fox Cities, great. Any others? Get Connected. I've not heard that one. I will have to check into that. That sounds great. Great. Any others? And then we'll move on. I think we'll move on to this next question. We're going to talk a little bit about nonprofit resources over the last year. So as many of you are probably aware, various members of the WisNRG network also took part in an ongoing study of how COVID-19 and the various shutdowns have impacted the state sector. And one of the questions that we asked was, in this time of crisis, what are the most useful resources to nonprofits around Wisconsin? And their responses were as follows. And these are, you can kind of see the breakdown. This is information that has already been made available. A lot of it was sharing. Boy, my typing really didn't do very well this time around, but sharing information with funders, government officials, corporate leaders, getting the word out and reevaluating fundraising strategies, sharing your message, technology support, and scenario planning, budgeting, crisis budgeting were probably the top 5 answers. And so now that we've had, 10 months of lockdown, and as we go into 2021, keeping some of these different topics in mind and some of the other ones that you may have first of mind for yourselves, let's ask another question. What are the most needed resources and supports for you, Wisconsin's nonprofit sector, going into 21? Now that we've had some time to deal with this and kind of figure out some of the virtual elements of service delivery, had time to engage our funding networks, our donors, what are some of the most needed resources that you see going into the new year? Or has anything changed? Are all of those still very, very current needs? I'm going to give you 1 minute to answer. This one may take a little bit more time to think of, so. Volunteers, absolutely. Now that we're going to be hopefully getting back in contact with our volunteer base. Training and expertise, funding is always a big one. Technology resources. Anything else?
Oh, for fuck's sake.
And you might want to mute your microphone.
Sorry about that.
No, we're glad to have you here. And I totally agree with your sentiments. So.
At least I didn't shout it out. I've done that on other calls.
Are you on the phone? Are you on the phone?
So we've got a big word cloud developing here, and I see volunteers as being number one. I don't know about anybody else. We are about at time. I don't want to let this go on for too long, but this is kind of fascinating. Funding diversification, funding, volunteers, technology, this is all keeping with what we saw initially with 2020. So there haven't been too many changes, but it is kind of interesting to see volunteers dead center as one of the largest largest needs. As the president of the Association of Volunteer Management here in southeastern Wisconsin, I find this very important as we kind of look to how to better support the volunteer community and the people that interact with them. So I'm going to take this back to my board meeting next week. All right, boy, I see answers still coming in. So, but I want to move on. So we can save this. I think this is some really excellent and useful information, particularly for the members of WisNRG as we help to look to develop some of the supports and training resources for these areas. So thank you for all of this information. And so this one gets a little bit deeper. So looking at some of those needs and operational challenges, are you primarily interested in pro bono services that is free of charge, reduced, affordable, accessible paid services, or paid services with a vetting of quality? I'm going to give you guys a little time to answer this. And I'm looking for primarily. We all, I think, would love pro bono if that was all we could have, that would be great. But as we look at all spectrums of sizes and budgets of nonprofits, where are your primary interest? Where do your primary interests lie? There's a lot of quiet people in the room, but that's absolutely okay. All right, we've been coming up on a minute here and things seem to be slowing down. So clearly the lead is with the affordable paid services, and I would say pro bono is second, obviously there, and paid services with vetting. So this is useful to us as we look at how we might provide information or referrals to some of these services, as we look at making sure that you're getting the kind of information that you need the most. So, all right, so this is a time for us to get a lot of information from you as to whether we're on the right track and whether or not we're wasting time or let you have offer some feedback to us. So first of all, is a resource directory useful to you and other organizations in your area? Is something like a resource inventory useful, or is it a waste of time? And I just give you about 30 seconds to answer this one. Seems all pretty positive, so that's encouraging. Great, good. Okay. Looks like we're repeating some of the same answers. So, but that's all very positive. At least we are on the right track. We did recognize the value and the need. So we will, I think it's safe to say we'll keep on track there. So great. So again, we're looking for some information based on what you've seen so far. If you weren't aware of the inventory, if you weren't aware of kind of how we're looking at things, do you see any gaps, anything that we might be missing? And we will open this up a little later too, but just to get some essential off the top of the head input, do you see any other suggestions?
And maybe I'll just add a little to this to just get your gears turning. You know, some of the things we've debated is if we have this on a website and we list the resources, should we organize them according to region? Should it be more searchable? Are the categories that we've set forth relevant? How should we verify the accuracy and the quality, et cetera?
I will say, you know, this may be a premature question, particularly for those that are not familiar with the inventory. It can be found on our website, WisNRG.com, for future reference. I don't want you to all go scrambling there right now to look at it, but it is out there. It has been for a while, and we've tried to do our best to make it, you know, kind of get the word out, realizing that there have been limitations getting this around statewide. So it is out there, but based on what we've talked about here and what you've seen in other directories, what might we do to make it more useful to you? And I see a lot of comments regarding searchability, keeping current, absolutely. Regional organization, helpful, searchability. Let's see, what else have we got? Keyword searchability, great. This is all different, all very useful information. Because quite honestly, in many ways, it is not searchable in these particular ways that you all are suggesting currently. So this is all very, very useful. Great. I'm going to give you about 15 more seconds. If you have any other thoughts to throw out there, please do. Searchable by county. That's good. All right. So with that, these are all very, very useful. Great. So what else, other than a resource directory and access points in a referral type basis, what else would you like to see as a resource to the statewide sector? I know that some of you have mentioned training and resources. Are there any other top of the head ideas that you can come up with or that you see an obvious need for right now?
Hello, I got here a little bit late, but
Ernesto,
Ernesto Gonzalez.
yes,
Castellano.
please. If
Um,
you go ahead.
just thinking through something that from time to time comes up. The demographics. I don't know. I know there's you know, if you go to state or whatever, you can find demographics on
So data, demographic data, is that what you're talking about?
demographic data of people of color, or you know, poverty, or
Yeah,
etc.
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
links or you know, but that would be
Great. I will definitely
helpful.
make note of that. Anybody else want to chime in? So Ernesto, you did get here a little late. We are using a platform called Menti.
Mhm.
If you open a web browser to menti.com,
Right, I see that.
and you can enter that code, and that way you can put your thoughts
Okay.
in documentation, and we can keep that information. We do have somebody taking notes as well, so she'll get that down either way. But feel free to join us on Menti as well.
Okay.
Networking, mentoring, training,
How can I get that?
events for high school age students to grow involvement in arts and arts administration. Idea pool. So I'm curious regarding an idea pool. I'm thinking, does that mean, and whoever submitted that, does that mean a line of communication of some sort to talk with other nonprofit leaders in the same areas? If it does, I will point out there is a resource called nplace.org, nplace.org, that is somewhat of like, think of it as a social media community for nonprofits specifically. It's not solely Wisconsin-based, but it is pretty heavily Wisconsin right now. I think it's a very underutilized platform, but the more we can help build that, the better. That's not necessarily answering idea pool, the ideal pool idea, but it is just another form of communication. So
Yeah.
it looks like things have, go ahead, please.
Oh, yeah, I just am watching in the chat, and our colleague Kim O'Brien from the Fox region has made a great suggestion, which is just, this might be an okay time as well to just mention that some of these things, although they can be very much expanded and developed, are out there a little bit, and we are trying to coalesce some of that across WisNRG. So I think what Kim's trying to say is some of these suggestions like trainings, board development opportunities, networking at events and things like that, those are things we're trying to make sure we're aware of across the state. And then we're relying heavily on Jobs That Help as a place where we can post all of that information. A key partner of ours who had, in Ben Hassel, who leads it, had already created a very nimble, usable website. I'm going to ask Kim, though, if she'd like to unmute herself and chime in a little bit more about the resources that she's referring to that might already be in place or be tracked by WisNRG, even if there's a long ways to go.
Thanks, Mary Beth. Yeah, I was specifically referring to when someone said job postings, and Ben's on the line here with jobsthathelp.com offers that for statewide. So just some of the things they listed are already available. Again, depending on what area you're in, United Way Fox Cities up by northeast side of Wisconsin will post your jobs for free as a nonprofit. So I think it depends on where you are. And we, again, can, some of those things are already on the WisNRG resources tab for people to look at. Some of the board training, things like that. I know that HBI in Milwaukee is doing some of that. We are doing some of that. MPLI up in the northeast corner of the state or the Fox Valley region. So, and that is listed on the Wisconsin Nonprofit Resource Group page under our region per se. So that's why I said there's a lot of questions here that people might not know that those are already in place. Great.
Exactly, and that's hopefully one of the side benefits of today's town hall, is to help with some of that awareness as we kind of move forward. Go ahead, Mary Beth.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can't see your face at the moment, Bryce, so I'm sorry to interrupt you. I also think that's an important point to raise and to link back to our why, what, how, is that as a network, we did really choose to use words like connect and share information and resources, because what I think we've acknowledged over the years is that building something from ground zero may not be the plausible thing to do, nor the best thing to do, because there certainly are resources out there and experts out there all across the state. And so up until now, we've really seen ourselves as a place where we can coalesce some of that information and share it back out. And that's also important to raise now, because if you're aware of resources and trainings and things like that, that we're not, we need, connecting with you about that is also very important. And as we build ways to inventory this stuff, we want to make sure we have everything that's already out there and not be duplicative or build something that somebody else has already built.
Exactly. Great. So let's move on and talk about what's next, and kind of see where WisNRG may be going. So first of all, the fact that we do have a lot of people that are just learning about us, what can we do to make that better? How can we communicate with you? To date, we have been primarily using partner organization communications, emails from HBI, emails from the Commons, and so on. What is the best way for us to get word out to you and to your various networks of nonprofits and people that might be benefiting from the work we're doing? We have, it looks like a separate WisNRG listserv is taking the lead. That's interesting, because one of the first things we discussed was that we didn't want to be flooding people with yet another newsletter from another organization. But it sounds like that might actually be the right way to move forward. Great, looks like the responses are settling down here. Social media, organizations, but it does look like a separate WisNRG e-blast is the preferred method. That's good to know. Definitely something we'll be talking about in our next meeting, I have no doubt. All right, so let's move on to the next one and talk about what comes next in terms of today's event. As I've mentioned in the chat a couple times, today's video presentation will be made available. Look for something early next week. All of the people that registered for this event will be getting an email link. It will be probably made available through HBI's YouTube channel for public access, and as well as being posted to the WisNRG website. All of the answers that you have provided us will be collected and summarized in a follow-up report, probably 1 or 2 pages, and made available through our both made available to and to you through the various partner organizations, so that we can look at this information and see how we can benefit the services we're providing to meet your needs better. And then finally, feel free to check out our website and kind of look at the inventory and some of the resources we've listed at WisNRG.com. And there is a contact us page where you can shoot us an email with any thoughts that may have come up after the fact, or once you get a chance to really dig in and look. There is that form of communication, or any of us that are on the call, either myself, Mary Beth, Kim O'Brien, Amy Hilgendorf, Ben Hastel from the various partner organizations. Feel free to contact us directly as well if you feel comfortable. So, anything else that you might have questions or comments on? At this point, it says go to Menti, but we are at the end of our presentation and we still have about another 10 minutes. If anybody wants to unmute or throw something in the chat, feel free to let us know. We can have a little bit of more of an open conversation now for the next 10 minutes. And otherwise, you can have 10 minutes of your life back on a Friday and enjoy the weekend if you feel like touching or dropping out. Are there plans to conduct research on the state of the arts due to COVID? We are still going on the statewide COVID-19 study is still going on. To my understanding, it's not specific to the arts, but we are looking at sort of the sector wide and look more than likely, being how the arts are affected, we'll be pulling some of that information out separately. And so we can certainly talk more about that offline, both Anne and Posey, and kind of look at how we can make that happen. Should we all drop our contactinfo.org? We do have your email addresses if you registered for this event at this point. And we can be sure to add you to a listserv, which it seems we will be building. So if we will go ahead and do that. Anything else? With that, thank you for joining us. We've had a great time. I would say if you have is there a phone number to call? There is not, other than reaching out to this individual partner members. I will say you can feel free to reach me. I will put my office number in the chat. Oops, wrong. I have wrong settings here. You can contact HBI at that number, and we can certainly take the conversation from there and help you in finding specific resources. Likewise, Commons, the Nonprofit Leadership Initiative in the Fox Valley region, I would encourage you to look around, check out the WisNRG site, look at the partner organizations, see who's closest to you, and reach out to them directly, because they're going to be the most aware of what might be in your area.
And I would just say, if anyone here is a person who represents a unit that is serving nonprofits in Wisconsin and is a public or nonprofit entity, I'm getting the feeling there are some extension folks here that may have some things to contribute. You know, we would love to have more folks that fit that definition in on our quarterly meetings and things. So between the various contacts that Bryce just referred to, just hit us up and we can definitely loop you in more if you're interested.
Great. And because I like Brad Pitt, but I'm getting tired of him blowing a kiss at everybody, I'm going to stop screen sharing. And that way we can have perhaps more of an open conversation for the next 5 minutes or so. Anything? Somebody mentioned FDO. I do want to throw out as a resource when we talk about funding The Helen Bader Institute, and this is just a plug, the Helen Bader Institute recently joined a partnership with candid.org to provide training and access to the funders directory online, which normally you would have access points when we're face-to-face. We are now the 8th location in Wisconsin, but a lot of them have had to shut down due to the lockdown. However, we've been able to work out an arrangement with Candid and the funders, the Foundation Center, to provide a limited access. It is more limited than you would have from a face-to-face, access point to the Foundation directory. You can simply go to the HBI website, look for our Nonprofit Skills Academy, and look for information on that to register for access to it. We're also offering training on it on a monthly basis, as well as some other trainings out there as well. That's something fairly new to 2021, and word has certainly gotten out in the southeastern Wisconsin area, and we had a number of people from La Crosse and some from other areas of the state that are hearing about it. But the more you can help spread the word to your colleagues, that would be wonderful. So, anything else? I think we're petering out here. Well, I'll just sit here and look at each other's names and headshots and things. So, but with that, I think we're going to wrap it up and call it a day and give you back a whopping 5 minutes of your life. And thank you all very much for taking part in this and providing feedback. There's been some very, very valuable information provided to us that we will take very sincerely to heart. Like I say, I think 2021 you've just given us a lot to think about and a lot to do. And it's all excellent, excellent. Thank you very much. And so with that, I am going to stop. We've also been broadcasting live on Facebook, and I want to give a shout out to my mom because I think she's the only one watching. So, and with that, I'm going to stop that stream. And I'm also going to stop the recording.